not 10 o'clock. It's 3 minutes to.
We are live. Hello, people. Yeah, so we were setting up for the stream. We left our audio on the whole time. That was funny. No
I didn't
secrets.
leave it on.
So,
He left it on.
yeah, I left it on. I screwed up. So today we are going to talk about Fantasy Grounds Unity. Lady Shel and I were preparing for this last night, and one of the things I wanted to point out was that this is the early access. So this is basically an unfinished product. The early access end user license agreement. It supersedes the playtest. The primary change is that the public, like ourselves, can review or stream showing the program. But however, we must state that Fantasy Grounds Unity is in early access, and this is not the official release of the product. It has not been fully optimized, and not all the bugs have been remedied for early access build. The playtest agreement has been left as an attachment but is no longer active. So if you are interested in trying out Fantasy Grounds Unity, I would advise against migrating everything over at this point. I think that it would be detrimental if you felt cheated or something, and you got to remember that this is a beta, so be careful with that. This is the end user agreement that I put in the chat. I would like you guys to just consider this first video as an introduction to how to get it set up and started. We have used various slides to illustrate this, so we're not giving away our account data. So if you're looking for line of sight or functionality, we're not going to show a whole lot of that. We're hoping that these slides will kind of help you get started. We're going to actually put this up on YouTube afterwards, and we're going to build a series of videos. And I think our next video we will talk about line of sight and how that works. But for right now, we're just going to go through some of the slight differences of Fantasy Grounds and also the Unity Edition, how it kind of differs as far as setup and signing in and that sort of thing. So I want to introduce Lady Shel. She is here with me, and she's helping me set this up. She's been doing all the social media and the research, and her and I have both got together and we started basically taking a tally of what we needed for photos and how we're going to word it and all that good stuff. So, Lady Shel, how you doing today?
I am doing fine. It's a little chilly here this morning. I guess our temperatures are going to go back down. We had been having some days in the 80s, which is really strange for like February, March. But yeah, that's everybody would be jealous of that. That's living in snowy country back east or maybe in the Rockies or something like that. But yeah. Oh, and that's 80 degrees Fahrenheit because yeah, we in the US have to use that darn Fahrenheit and yeah. So no Celsius for us.
So first of all, I want to do a sound check to make sure I'm not talking to myself. Shel, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
What about
I'm
the
not I'm
stream?
not yeah, the stream needs to stay because I have the stream on. I'm just listening to you through Discord.
Yeah, I want to make sure that the focus isn't robbed here, and that everyone can see the slide that I have up now. Hopefully, it's visible to the rest of you.
Looks like we are being heard.
All right, and the slide. How does the slide look? Anybody can see that slide that I have up? It should be full screen, nothing else other than the OBS overlay. All right.
Yay.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So before we get started, Lady Shel and I are going to just kind of comment on some of these slides. We're very excited to have Unity out now. Doug took a large gamble in releasing this early for everybody because he knows how excited and how everyone's chomping at the bit for it. So he was very nice and cordial about it, and he decided with his team to release Fantasy Grounds Unity a couple weeks early at least. And he's hoping that probably he can get a lot of good data and that he wants to satisfy his community. So that was a kind of I think it was a good move, even though it's not completely done. He's shooting for the end of April, roughly, to have the final release out. With that said, it is not available yet through Steam. So as of today, which is what, the March 18th,
19th.
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 So March 19th, 2020, this version of this video is regards to FG, or Fantasy Grounds Unity Edition beta. So if you see this video months after this, I'm sure some things have changed. So just remember, it's not available through Steam yet. The reason for that is that they're kind of having trouble with some of the third-party content. So some of the DLC licenses are not working quite right, but they'll get that straightened out. So yes, 2020 release of Fantasy Grounds Unity, and we're going to talk about the setup part. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Do you have any other comments, Shel?
Nope, nothing for me. Oh, look, your Fantasy Grounds logo thing is duplicated. I guess because it's on your
Yeah,
overlay.
yeah. So there's the turtle. If anyone wants to know what that is, that's our secret turtle.
It's me.
Anyhow, so when you first launch Fantasy Grounds after you install it, you want to download that from the official website. I'm not sure if you have any links for that, Shel, but you want to download it from the website, and there is a Classic and a Unity section on the website. When you go there, you want to go ahead and download the demo, whether you have a license or not, and you're going to install it. And from what I've learned through the alpha and the beta and the early access was that when you install it the first time and then you go to update it, it will update the updater. So the old updater will get copied over with a new one. It will install after it downloads, and then it will reboot, and then you want to check for updates again, and then that will pull in any recent updates that have to do with DLC or anything like that. So depending on if you're signed in or not. So that's one thing I wanted to let you know, that the updater updates itself initially. So when you first get in here and you install it and you hit check for updates, it's going to update the updater. So let it do that. If you happen to stop it in the middle of that process, I think you could potentially corrupt the install and have to start over. A couple times I have had to go back and uninstall Fantasy Grounds because of other issues, but you want to make sure that it's not installed in the exact same directory as your Classic. And I know that's taboo, so make sure that doesn't happen. So, Lady Shel, do you have any initial comments about when you installed it or downloaded it, or other than your internet?
Yeah, I know. My internet is always a problem. What I wanted to say is, oh crap. What did I want to say? Oh, when you make sure that, like Laerun said, you don't want to stop it in the middle. So when you are installing this, make sure that you have time to like let it run. Maybe do it while you're sleeping or something. Because it could go for quite a while if you have a lot of content for it to download again.
Right. And we're kind of jumping ahead of things, but that's if you already have your license plugged in and all that good stuff. So now I'm going to go.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I did it too. We're going to go to the next slide. There's our turtle again. So here is basically the a little bit closer view of the launch screen. If you look to the right, Lady Shel has circled the ultimate license status on the right-hand side. It will let you know your license status. Down on the bottom left, you see check for updates. So that usually only comes on after you've already signed in to your account. But then you have all the links and places that you can check out. There's a bunch of links there to go to the website, the support email, the different stores, that sort of thing. So after you've installed and you get to the page where you need to plug in your data, which is in your settings. This is the first thing you want to check out. So this is the basic Fantasy Grounds account data and license key entry area. So this is a tab in the settings. So when you click on settings, this is the first tab. What I had found out is you put your username and your password in, and then you can click log in. And if it asks for your key, you can enter that, and it will let you know if it's valid or not right away. Do not put in your old keys from your old copies of Fantasy Grounds. You need to fetch, retrieve, or recall any of your new license keys, whether it was from beta or alpha, or you just purchased the item. And that will be in your history on the store page. So if you go to the website and you head to the store and you drop that down, you will see your order history. And in there, you can click and find out what your new key is. It should have been emailed to you, but some people get it blocked or it goes to a junk folder. So if you're missing your key, make sure that you check on the official Fantasy Grounds website. It's www.fantasygrounds.com. Click on Store, and there'll be a drop-down menu. And at the bottom, they'll say History. And you click on that, and that'll have the history of everything you purchased. And it should say Fantasy Grounds Ultimate for Unity. So Fantasy Grounds Unity Ultimate Edition. And you'll have
Or
a
standard if that's what you bought.
correct. Depends on what you purchased. So that is basically the first tab. When you join, you want to make sure that that's correct. You want to make sure you hit login, and then you click on the save button, and that will save your data. And then what will happen is if you don't go to the other tabs and you go out of this area, sometimes Fantasy Grounds will reboot, and it'll take you to the front page again. Then you're going to probably have to click update, and it will pull in all your purchases. So the next tab is basically based off of like the old classic. So Lady Shel, what does this do?
Yeah, this account information, this is something that you used to be able to, well, you still can access it on the SmiteWorks website, but it allows you to sync
Your Steam account, and you can sync Paizo from here. So we lost Lady Shel's voice. But yes, so you can go to the website and you can check your down here on the bottom left, there's this graphic. So you click on store and you got Paizo Sync and also Steam Sync. So that's one area you set up. And then over on the Fantasy Grounds updater on the account side, it will take you to those subsections on the website. So this way you can get all your Steam purchases registered and all your Paizo registered. So we lost Lady Shel's voice, so hopefully she come back.
You didn't lose my voice. Excuse me, I turned my push to talk off because I was coughing to death because I'm eating this stupid gumbo soup and it's kind of hot, spicy hot, and
Uh-huh.
sometimes it makes me.
Okay. So going to the next slide. Okay, Lady Shel, what's up with this? So we have the advanced
So
setting.
this is the advanced settings where you should not touch this. This just shows your app directory where your program is stored and the data directory where your data is stored. And you need to make sure not to put these in the same place because things could get corrupted that way. So it's good to have two different directories for that.
Right. If you're trying to troubleshoot with SmiteWorks, you can turn on the advanced logging, and it will record different things that you're doing with Fantasy Grounds. And down below that is a drop down that live is probably where most of you will stay. But there's a developer mode and a what's the other one? There's like a beta mode basically where they put in all the latest changes. Unless you are a developer or somebody that's working directly with SmiteWorks, I wouldn't mess with that too much. If you go in there and get the latest updates and then they end up changing it again and you have a campaign running, there's a potential you could corrupt it or lose your data. So I would leave it alone unless you absolutely know what you're doing and that you have some sort of agenda or plan as to why you need to change that. So moving on. So after you've plugged in your data and you go to the front page and you click update, then what happens, Lady Shell?
Well, if you have purchases here, it's going to start going through your purchases, and you can see it found 16 products. And this is mine. I have 110 purchases. There's kind of a lot there, so it takes me a while to update. But it'll scroll through each of the things and look for updates in each of the different modules and stuff. And when it reaches the end, I believe it turns green. The bottom progress bar turns green, and I think it might say finished. I can't recall exactly what it says, but you will know when it stops finally updating.
Yeah, so I have 440 products, and it took, I want to say, about 35 minutes for Fantasy Grounds to go through and look for everything, and it took another 20 minutes to download and install. So it took about an hour roughly. So if you have purchased content and your accounts are set up correctly, the launcher will pull in all your past purchases and your recent buys. Remember that SmiteWorks will update generally on US Tuesdays. Now, being that we're in the beta stage, sometimes you will see a daily update. So if you see that, that is why, because there's continuously made improvements. There's line of sight added to new products every day. There are different little changes and tweaks that they make based off of data that they're getting from the test. So if you have any issues, make sure you go to the Fantasy Grounds forums, and there is a thread there where you can report issues. It's better to do it there than in the college or on some private thing or a stream because the developers and the owners of the software want to see that. And they might be able to chime in and help. They might be looking for a trend. It could be any number of support reasons. But make sure you email or post all of your problems in the official Fantasy Grounds website. That will be the best place for that. There's nothing wrong with asking questions in our community in the college, but you want to make sure that you are posting your problems and error codes and anything like that in the forums. That way it can be addressed. If they have a solution for you, they will tell you. And if it's something they continuously see, they can address it. So if we don't help them figure out what any of the bugs are at this point, then it's not going to improve very rapidly. So we need to help them as much as we can with that. Okay, so the Fantasy Grounds Unity launcher screen, you have a few different sections here. So obviously on the top right, that was your license status where it's circled. You can update and check your settings down on there where it says settings and updates down by that computer cloud icon. You can host a game or join a game. So if you are a player, more than likely you're going to just join a game. If you are a DM or you're the host or a game master, you obviously would be hosting most of the games. You can click on um, direct links for official help. So all those links for getting started, getting content, getting help, those are all important sections to help you directly go to where you need to go. There's even a getting help email Fantasy Ground support directly built into the interface. There is also the forums. That is where I was telling you earlier that you'd like to probably find the section for Unity and report your issues there. And on the top left corner, you have two symbols up there. The new folder or the data folder is on the top left of the launch screen. So if you're trying to put in your campaigns, you want to click on that folder and navigate to the campaign folder and put your Fantasy Grounds campaign in there. Now, the caveat is once you put it in Unity, you do not want to move it back to Classic. There's several reasons for that, but I've seen issues where people have tried to go back and forth. So if you're going to move your campaign entirely, you're going to pretty much have to stay in Unity. unless you're only doing it for a test. But other than that, I would keep those separate for a while until Unity is in full launch, at least. So if you're planning on moving everything over right now, you might have some issues. There may be some frustration. You just have to be patient, and you really have to let Fantasy Grounds think, because I notice a couple times it'll pause on me, or it's indexing the files that you're opening, and it needs time to process that. So the way Fantasy Grounds works now is not optimized. So you want to be careful with trying to use it like you did with Classic until they get it fine tuned. So you kind of have to baby it a little bit until you get used to how it operates and its little quirks. It will get better, but in the meantime, you have to keep your frustration level down and just try to go with it and be patient with it. And it does work. It just takes some practice. It takes a little bit of patience and to be aware of the changes that are coming out. So on the top left is the data folder. The other symbol up there with the lines, that is a log. So if you're having issues, one of the places where you can find the log is where if you click on that button on the top left with the lines going horizontal, it'll actually pull up the log of your last login and such. So there's some information in there as well.
We have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Okay, farm one ND. I can't say your name. Apologize for my mispronunciation. Says hello. My FGU client is a little bit blurry. Mainly some fonts and some icons. And yes, the Sigel is at 100%. Do you guys have the same?
Yes, that is a common concern, and I do have it. It's just slightly blurry, kind of looks like it has an effect on it. That may be by design. It could also be that they've used some of the older assets, and at a higher resolution, it doesn't display the same. I'm not sure what causes that, but I am sure that they will address that over time. I think because that's more of a cosmetic thing. The font issue has been an issue since I started using Fantasy Grounds. So we actually have in our college, in Fantasy Grounds College, we have a font. I wouldn't say a solution, but an alternative to using Fantasy Grounds, and it's an extension. It was written for Fantasy Grounds Unity. It was put together by John Waits, who is also known as we call him Matakire. He put together the extension. It is in our general chat, and if you go up to the top right of Discord in our community, you can click on the little thumbtack, and if you scroll through there, you'll see the extension. It's called Montserrat Font Extension. There's one for Classic and there's one for Unity. And what that does is it replaces the default font with one that's slightly cleaner and just a tad bit bigger. So when you scale your screen or anything like that, you'll still get a somewhat of a decent font. It's not perfect, but I think it's a little better than what they give you to begin with. So hopefully that helps you with your question.
Right, that font can be found, like Laerun said, on the general chat. Click the pin, and if you scroll down to the messages, there's date when people post things. The Montserrat font extension FGU is on the date of 11/6/2019. And the file name is Montserrat underscore font underscore FGU dot ext. And if you put that in your extensions folder in Fantasy Grounds Unity, that may help clear up your the text portion.
Yes, and you have to enable it before you launch. So make
Oh
sure that.
yeah, when you go back in and you load your campaign up again, you make sure that you check that on the extensions folder.
Yep. So this page that we have for joining a campaign, we are only showing one way that you can connect, and this is through the cloud service. So one new way to join a campaign is through the cloud-based service. Now, I recently have had firsthand experience with this. Using Classic, I had a hard time with 2 or 3 students connecting to my table. But once we installed the Classic edition or the Fantasy Grounds Unity edition, They went ahead and downloaded the demos and they connected to my table through the cloud service. Now, I'm not saying the cloud service is perfect because there are a few bugs, but they were able to connect to my table no problem. Now, staying connected was the issue. I don't know what caused that, but it could be on their end. It could be the server overloaded. Who knows? But they were able to connect to my table despite having issues before. So that is a good sign. The cloud does not officially host your game. It facilitates the connection. So the handshaking process between your computer and your DM's computer is facilitated by the cloud. So the cloud is not storing anything but your connection data. It's just saying, here's this person and here's this person. We connect to this person. It doesn't allow you to store or host anything. All it does is it makes it easier for you to connect via the cloud. Instead of using the older peer-to-peer, that is the new way to connect. The old way is very similar. You have to have the direct IP address or the the alias and the host address. Those are similar to how the old Fantasy Grounds work. You can still do it that way, but this way allows your game to have visibility if you're the host. So if you look on the right where the lobby is, there's a whole bunch of different people there that are checking out Fantasy Grounds, and they have made their campaign public. And that's what I had to do to allow Lady Shel to connect to my table. So on the top there, you see the history. So if the game is set to public, it will appear in a list view in the game lobby on the top under history. If you've joined a previous session, it will appear in your history. And then down below are basically different tables. And you can see that mine under Laerun for Unity Test is listed there. The GM can change the IP or the port or whatever they need to, but in this case, it would just be to give out a password. So I gave Lady Shell a password. It was very simple. She was able to connect to my table, and we didn't have too many issues after that. This page information is more geared to a player. We will do other videos that will get more into depth on the connection settings and how you set up a campaign through the new Unity launcher. Our next videos also will cover line of sight more. We'll start getting into, the map tools and such. But for right now, we just want you to be able to download the software, get it installed, set up your keys, get all your content downloaded, and then start hosting and joining campaigns so that you can test it out for yourself. So that is the main focus of this discussion. The information that we're giving you will change a little bit slightly over time, but for the most part, I think most of the stuff will stick and stay. Um, if you have issues with networks things or anything like that, there is just a number of things that can go wrong on the cloud side of things. It could be your internet settings, could be the flood protection. There's all kinds of things that can potentially cause that issue. But I think there's still a few network bugs that SmiteWorks is aware of. I know one at one point, I think it's got better, but sometimes when people connect to your table and they get disconnected, if they try to reconnect, sometimes uh, their status or their state when they were connected before isn't released by the server. So when they try to reconnect, they'll say that they're already connected. So sometimes when you use the cloud, it doesn't release your connection status right away. And the only way I was able to troubleshoot that was to have everyone log off. And then I rebooted Fantasy Grounds and started the session back up. And then that user was able to reconnect. The problem with that, though, is he probably had other issues or there was some other bug on top of that. So it was hard to say if that's a fix or not. But it will get better. Some of these connection issues will smooth out over time. And other things might imply that, your computer might be out of date. So if some of you are using a old laptop and you were able to run Classic, it might also be now that you might have to beef it up a little. So there are some specs listed in the Fantasy Grounds forum some minimum specs. Um, I would still try to run this as a host using a wired connection. So you want to be plugged in, not through a wireless situation as much as possible. And as a player, I would recommend the same thing. You don't want to use a wireless connection if you can help it. It really potentially makes it easier for you to have disconnection issues. I'm not saying don't do it, but I recommend that you try to plug into a Ethernet cable. Let's see. So what else? Oh, and Lady Shel was able to connect to my table the other day. It was yesterday or the day before, and we made character. We had no problems making a character, so we'll do an episode on character creation using Unity. It is really 90% the same as far as how that process works. I haven't seen any issues regarding, um, the creation process. There is a little lag occasionally when you access books or libraries, but for the most part, it seems to work just like Classic does. And I don't have an issue with that. Sometimes I get a little frustrated when I click on an asset or on a book and it takes it a minute to load or something. But other than that, it seems to be pretty decent. And a lot of that is memory optimization. So they have to go into the Unity engine and optimize and change some settings to balance the overall functionality of the system. And once they get enough data and they can see how people are using Fantasy Grounds, they can make those adjustments accordingly. So that is something that you're going to have to be patient with. So, Lady Shel, do you have any comments about our session that we did the other day, other than me being impatient with you?
Yeah, we won't mention that. By the way, oh, you just there. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to comment on that slide. The little lock symbols, those are the games that are private. The ones without the lock are public and you could access them. At least that's what I believe, because ours was set to private and you do have the little lock symbol on.
Right, and I had a password, so maybe that means password protected.
Oh, it could be password, yes.
But nonetheless, if you see a game that's open like that, don't connect to it unless the people know that you're trying to. I had somebody yesterday. I knew that he was with my group, but as I was doing something, he connected to the table, and he already had the credentials and everything. And it does kind of pause or freeze Fantasy Grounds temporarily while people are connecting. So you can't do anything for a minute or so while people are joining your table. So I
Pretty
wanted,
much it's the same thing though in Classic, because every time
yeah.
if you have 5 people logging into the table, they're going to experience lag at the beginning of the session. So you just have to be a little patient there, especially when everybody's trying to log in and load their assets, like the player's handbook, which is quite long.
Any other questions or concerns or anything about Unity? We're not experts by any means, but we have had a little bit of exposure to it, and we have done some testing. And I read the forums and I look at some of the other problems that people have. But generally, I'm really happy with the direction they're going. I don't think it's quite there yet. If I had to put a number on it, I would say maybe 75%. There are some networking issues and some fine tuning that need to be done. And of course, they're still entering data for other rule sets. So obviously, they put a lot of time in the 5th edition rule set. Some of the other rule sets still need some work, and I know that they will come through. So, when my personal assessment, I think you give this a good year, like maybe, January of next year or so, you'll really be a lot more further along and progressed, and they will be able to add more functionality and more features as time goes on. One of the features that people were asking for is to have multi-screen, and I think they did mention that initially they couldn't do it, but I think they have maybe found a way that they might be able to incorporate something like that. The other thing was colored dice. Right now, you can't really change the dice as far as skins go, but I think that was something that they might consider in the future. There's all kinds of things that people are requesting that they're not going to implement right away. So it's just a matter of time. Um, bang for your buck. So if they make changes, is it going to profit them? Is it worth their time? That sort of thing. There are also the requests that you can make online. There's an idea former where you can actually go in and request for certain issues to be addressed, or you can also ask for features that are not there or missing, or maybe they've taken them away. But there are a few things I wanted to let you know that have changed in the interface. And one of them is the mood lighting. They've kind of changed that a little bit. They removed the button for it. You can't lock tokens yet. I think that's coming down the pipe. During the alpha test, we couldn't even resize the windows, which I'm really glad they brought that back. And there was a few other minor things that have changed. And you don't have a separate tokens and module thing anymore. Now it's called assets. So when you click on the assets, that is your images, your tokens, and your portraits. There's like 3 or 4 tabs, and you can go through there. Your session will not create a folder until you have placed an image in your campaign folder. So in other words, the folder is not visible in your menu view. So when we get into the other tutorials, we will show that more.
Also, you can scale the UI. Back when we were in alpha and early beta testing, you weren't able to scale the UI, and that's super helpful if you have a screen that is very, very large or very, very small.
That's right. So hopefully this helps you guys a little bit. So we want to review here. So the main thing is to get the demo installed. Get it installed and get it updated. Once you've done that, then go into your settings, plug in your username and your password for the forums. Then you're going to put in your key, and then you're going to click save.
I also have
So,
two questions
sure.
here. Okay, so Dominionist wants to know, once you start a game, is there any way to stop additional people from joining?
Password. I'm pretty sure that once you've started like if you left it on public and you didn't want anyone else to join after that, you can go in. There's a command. I think it's right/password with a space after it, and then you can type in a new password, and that should stop people from connecting. Another thing that Fantasy Grounds doesn't do is there is no more return to launcher. So when you exit Fantasy Grounds, you actually close the program. So just kind of let you know. Next question.
Next question's from D20 TV. She wants to know, I have a question, Fantasy Grounds College. Will we still have to use the D&D Beyond converter to import characters in Unity, or will there be a way to have it auto do that for you? Also, I heard they will be letting you import your content from D&D Beyond as well into FGU. Truth or not?
I have not heard of any official utility. As far as I know at this point, you will still have to manually convert it with the web page converter. I don't think they're going to synchronize with D&D Beyond. They are completely different products. As a matter of fact, they may even be in competition somewhat. So I haven't heard anything about content being pulled over. If there is, that's something new that I'm not aware of. So hopefully that helps with that. So as far as I know, you're going to have to use the third-party conversion website to do that. So the main thing is once you get it installed and updated, then you want to come in here and put in your username, your password, and your license key. You're going to log in first, put your license key in, and then hit save. And that should do it if you have your password correct. Now, there has been issues where people have copied and pasted their license key or their password or username, and it will put an extra character after, and that's a space, and it counts as a character. So make sure you check that if you're having issues. I had a problem with that the other day, and I was able to resolve it. Um, Ryan, the developer, he reached out to me personally, and he was going to do a one-on-one with me because I couldn't get my Unity up and running properly. And he said that to me, and he said that the launcher is still going to be updated, and it is going to include a filter that will cut extra spaces out. So when people copy and paste, it'll help eliminate some of that problem. And there was another improvement that he was going to make. I don't recall what it was, but it sounded pretty cool. So, any other questions?
I don't see anything right now, but if you have a question, please post it in the chat and I will let Larry.
Okay, so I think we're going to get going soon. Lady Shel, can you please post our community join? So if you're not a part of our community already, I would like you to join our Discord. We have an Ask the Expert section where you can talk about, these kinds of things or Fantasy Grounds related. We also have a Unity section if you have questions in there. But technically, if you're having problems with an existing account, I would definitely go to the forums for help. And as far as purchasing options, all that stuff is posted. Again, it is not available on Steam just yet. It might be another month or few weeks. I don't know when they'll get that straightened out. Um, this is beta, so just remember that it's not the full program yet. It is, like I said, 75, 80% done, I think. Even it's hard to say that because it's never really truly done. They're going to keep adding features. It's going to break the software. They'll fix it. It'll work. It's just a constantly evolving software based on usage, based off of customer input, and based off of data that they get from their server. So it's constantly going to be in flux. One thing, though, to remember is to back up your campaigns. So if you are going to be moving your campaigns around, put them on a thumb drive and keep them there. And regardless, that way you have your work saved. And if anything goes wrong, if there's a change that's being made that breaks your game, at least you have the base of it. And don't forget to link your account with Steam and Paizo if that's applicable. So if you have a Paizo store account where you buy PDFs, you can link this to Fantasy Grounds and it'll synchronize. And basically, it'll pull all of your purchases over to Fantasy Grounds. So if you decide you want to buy them through Fantasy Grounds, the digital version, you'll get a slight discount, or you get the cost minus the PDF cost. If you buy the product and you don't own it on the Paizo store, you can set up an account on the Paizo store, synchronize it with Fantasy Grounds, and once it recognizes what you've purchased on Fantasy Grounds, you will have access to the free PDFs that come with your purchase. That's why a lot of the Paizo products are a little bit more expensive because you're paying for both the digital copy and you're paying for the Fantasy Grounds copies. So, well, they're both digital, but one's a PDF and then one's the actual Fantasy Grounds data. So that is helpful. The Steam purchases, I would say if you have already purchased stuff on Steam, but you have the Unity edition, it should technically pull over any of your old purchases. The only thing is actually buying the platform itself. You can't buy the platform. But if you've already purchased content on Steam, technically it should be able to pull over that content and you will be able to use it in Unity, but you will not be able to buy Unity in through Steam. So that's the difference there. Yeah, so it'll pull your purchases if you got everything entered correctly. Make sure you email customer support if you have problems. Give them screenshots. Give them as much information as you can, and they'll turn it around pretty quickly. They usually don't keep you waiting very long. So really happy with the customer service that we get from Smiteworks and Fantasy Grounds. Doug and Dave and even John Gregory, Jen Page, all of those people, Ryan, all those people are really good people. They're decent. They get right on it. And if you have a good rapport with them and you don't act nasty or act like a little troll, they'll actually help you quite a bit. So that is basically the end of the stream as far as I know. Is there any other questions? Okay, Shel, I think we're going to wrap it up. I think we're going to call it a stream. I appreciate you guys coming on, and hopefully this helps a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream, and we are going to put this up on our YouTube channel. So if Lady Shel would post our YouTube channel in the stream, that would be great. Subscribe there, and any Unity demos or updates or anything that we post will be up there in case you missed it. We will also continue to put out a little bit of classic material as well. So if you're still using Fantasy Grounds Classic, we still have a ton of material for that. So until then, happy gaming, everybody, and we'll see you around the community. Bye bye.